You're watching Talking Who. Now go away.
Elisar from Talking Who, along with my colleague Sean,
Hello.
of course. And welcome to a very special Talking Who on podcasting. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves and your podcasts?
Hi, I'm Phil from the Whovian podcast.
I'm Laura from the Oodcast.
I'm James from the Doctor Who podcast.
I'm Adam from the Naked Scarf podcast.
Excellent, guys. Let's just sort of start off about the history of podcasting. Most people sort of probably goes back to really the iPod, when people first bought the iPod and you could start downloading. But there was internet radio before that. What do you know much about the actual history of how Doctor Who podcasting actually started?
Well, actually, one of our members, he went back even before the iPod. He was involved in producing a cassette podcast.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay.
So every few months or so, they would record everything on a little tape cassette and then send out copies to, I think,
doing real-time
12,
copies.
13 listeners. Yeah. So I think that was rather more work than any of us are really prepared to get involved with. That's really going back to the whole, the Stone Age of podcasting, I expect. I don't know anything in between then and now. It's just all a blur.
As it is for most Doctor Who fans, I think. I think there was development of getting your opinion out there, and that dates back as far back, long before the iPod, I think. And I remember people at the Fitzroy Tavern circulating cassettes, reviewing stories that are just transmitted. And I think that really was a natural extension of a fanzine. And the view you hear quite a lot articulated on podcasts is that podcasts are the natural extension of the old fanzine. Whether or not that's completely true or not, I'm not certain. But I think the reason why there are so many now is because sci-fi fans in general have a desire to make their voice heard, and nothing stops you. You've now got the technology to broadcast.
It's not a closed shop, is it?
Absolutely.
Anymore? Yeah, you can broadcast whatever the hell you like, really, can't you? But that's what surprised me when I got into it. It was the amount of Doctor Who podcasts out there.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Is it over 80, I think, isn't it? Or something like that.
Yeah, well, 80 that I know of, any that are part of the DWPA anyway.
And it's only been the last few years that it's really grown to this kind of numbers, I think, because originally you may know Doctor Who Podshock was the founding podcast, if you like. That was the first one that really picked up and went international. Everyone had listened to it over here in the UK. And then Doctor Who Online started producing the Whocast. For a long time it was just those two. They were the really big names. And it's only been, I would say, the last couple of years when all of a sudden you've got spin-off Doctor Who podcasts from other podcasts, and it's just grown, it's massive, and I think it's a point of debate whether or not we're now at the point of moving forward to the next thing. Is that possibly streaming yourself on YouTube, for instance? I wonder if anybody will think of that. So.
I suppose it sort of goes in hand, whereas before you had a computer, but you still had to maybe go out and buy equipment, but now you can just buy a laptop, the microphone's inbuilt, and the editing software is just part of your free software, so literally it is on everybody's ability to actually just make something.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads me to something that just popped into my head as we were all talking about the huge plethora of things that are now available podcast-wise. Do you think that perhaps the quality of the commentary has somewhat degraded from when there used to be fanzines? I'm mainly saying this because I recently had to write an essay on Doctor Who for the first time, and I agonised and deliberated over it and got about 6 different proofreaders. And once you've actually put something down in print and you put your name to it and it's your real name, you're out there exposed in that way, I think you end up being a lot more careful about what you write and a lot more measured in your response to things. And because the podcast is such an immediate form of critique, I'm wondering resulted in quite a lot of people talking a load of guff.
But it's also, if you're commissioned to write an article for a fanzine, you've got an editor
Yeah.
who will then look at that and then say, well, actually, you can make these changes, or there's always somebody else to critique you before it goes out into the public domain.
Well, it's also highly unusual for someone to write a piece for a magazine completely inebriated, whereas that's quite a common thing, it seems. I think some podcasts pride themselves on being completely oblivious to what they're saying before they start
You
recording.
obviously haven't met quite a few Fleetwood journalists.
Well, perhaps I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's a really important point, and it leads on to editing, I think, as well. And I know for certain that there's a number of sentences that I've started. I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to finish it until I'm there. And of course, that's completely different to when you write something.
Well, that instantly makes me think. I mean, when me and Elisar do Talking Who, which is live, basically it's just for me just one big long stream of conscience, you know. And as you say, there is no edit. I just put it out there. However, when you're doing one of these, you actually have a chance to go back and edit it or re-record it or whatever. So how do you approach that? Will you do a review several times? Will you re-edit what you do, or do you just do a stream of conscience and then just put it out there, available to download on the internet?
Stream of conscious, but then edit out all the gaps and going between sentences.
We plan and we edit heavily. I would say we record double the amount that makes it every podcast. And we have a rough idea of what we're going to say each time. Doesn't always follow the plan, but most of the time it does.
Because our podcast is quite sketch and song heavy, putting on all the sound effects and the backing music and so on and so forth means that, again, those sections are quite heavily edited. In terms of the discussion, I'd say it's about the same as the Doctor Who podcast. We record maybe double, and then we edit out the bits where maybe there's a little bit of editorial bias because, say for example, if somebody says something that the editor disagrees with, they might just cut it out and then put in them winning the argument. That sort of thing. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it has been known. So quite a great deal of editing.
Yeah, I think that for us it's basically just a stream of consciousness, really. But we do edit a few things out, if the occasional swear word. So we try and keep it clean. We're quite reasonably proud of our clean tag on iTunes, so we want to keep it that way. But there was only one occasion where we actually did something scripted, which was at the New Year, which I enjoyed doing because I was doing all the sound effects and doing the editing and everything, which was quite good. Whether it was successful or not, I've got absolutely no idea. But we just enjoyed doing it. That was a good thing, But that's the one only time I've actually scripted anything. So, but whether we want to do it again, it's very, very time consuming, and that's I think for us, because if it's right yourselves, you all got full-time jobs. It's meant to be a hobby, but I'm finding more and more it's not a hobby anymore. Podcasting.
Well, that's dangerous.
Yeah, it is.
Editing takes hours.
We just recorded our 51st episode, and I know that the editing for that took about 8 hours in total, because there were 5 different sketches, a song, and all the usual commentary. And one of them was one of the sketches, which hasn't actually been, I think it's just come out, so everybody go listen to it. But it's a condensed version of the whole episode, so we had to find sound effects for every single thing that had happened in the Christmas episode. That's how far behind we are. And try and sort of squeeze them all down to fit in a 3-minute clip. And it was, quite a challenge, but what that can eventually lead to is, if you're not regular with releasing your podcasts, obviously you do get a drop off of listeners, but you also do get quite a lot of flack from people who are expecting to get their weekly or their fortnightly fix, and then you find yourself thinking, well, actually it's 2 in the morning and I'm so tired and got work in the morning. Somebody in America is sort of metaphorically knocking on your door going, excuse me, where's my thing for my drive in the morning? Sorry, I'm really not sure that was an American accent, so I apologise.
I assumed it was someone who had emigrated to America.
Yeah.
So there is a set date in the calendar, month or week, that you are aiming to always be released on? It's like the second Tuesday of each month, or and how important is that then?
I'd say it's very important if you want to grow your listenership, and also to build a rapport and a relationship with your fans. And in our first and second season, we were really, really meticulous in trying to keep to those dates. The only time that we were late was actually the week that Chris and I got engaged, because we got engaged because I read that he was going to propose to me when looking for a script for one of the scenes that we were going to record. So that obviously put a bit of a spanner in the works, but we managed to get it out consistently every week. But that was jolly hard work, and yeah, it does cut into your time. Now I think we sort of aim more for like a fortnightly thing that doesn't always happen, depending on how tired you are.
Adam?
I'm just concerned I'm keeping quiet because we haven't released anything since the end of December. But real life has been hectic for both of us. But we try and do it fortnightly, but we're hopefully getting back on schedule once I finish my dissertation in September. So we're just doing it when we can. We're recording next week, so there'll be something soon. But yeah, ideally you do it regularly. Yeah.
Yes, certainly we do. Once a week, sometimes more than once a week. And I think the important thing, or two important things for podcasting, is one is reliability. You've got to build that trust with listeners. And yes, whilst on one hand it's really irritating when you do get emails saying, where is it, you're 25 minutes late this week. At the same time, you've got to look at the other side to that and thinking there are people out there who are really valuing what you're doing, and they're really pleased to hear a new episode, and they miss it when you don't. So that's good. But I also think you need to be able to keep a podcast fresh, and sometimes that's just by changing or tweaking your formats, and it very much depends what you're actually trying to achieve. And I think if you're trying to come up with something that's an exciting piece of comedy each week, like the Ucast, then I think you've got to accept that if I'm going to deliver that, I'm going to have no other life, because it must be an incredible amount of work goes into that. And therefore I think there is a direct correlation between the amount of effort you put in, the quality, and the number of listeners that you have. But yeah, certainly regularity is extremely high up our priority list, and Trev gets very, very antsy if we don't get one ready to go out on the Sunday night.
We were only supposed to originally start, we were only supposed to be a monthly podcast, and all we set out to do was just doing audio commentaries. That's all we set out to do. But then within, I think a couple of months after that, when season 6 started, we might as well just do comment on that each week. And then Miracle Day started as well. So then we're actually doing, like, when that was running parallel with Doctor Who for a brief period, we were doing like 2 a week. And we haven't been going quite a year yet, and we're already over 50 episodes. So yeah, so all the things we set out not to do, we're now doing. So we said, we're not going to do reviews, we're not going to do news, we're not going to do anything like that, and lo and behold, here we are, weekly podcast. So yeah.
With there being so many podcasts, how do you find your niche?
We don't really have one. I think we just we developed a dynamic between the presenters, and I think that's what's been the most successful thing for us. And you look at the reviews we have on iTunes, and I love the way these guys hit it off, because that is what is the most successful thing. I mean, we're not the most encyclopedic Doctor Who podcast, and our listeners will not be surprised to hear me say that at all.
Neither would I.
No. Or people who don't listen to this. Yes, I know, you're
Just
referring to the quiz, aren't you? Yes, great.
We beat them in a quiz at Gallifrey, bearing in mind that I've only seen it since David Tennant started. So
well, Sean is our resident encyclopedia.
Yeah.
His knowledge is quite incredible.
But this is it, you see. I think if you, as a listener, want to hear someone talk about the second cameraman on the 3rd episode of Full Circle, then maybe you would go to someone.
I'm not quite that knowledgeable.
You certainly wouldn't tune into us. It's the dynamic that's the most important thing, I think, for us. Therefore, we don't have a particular niche or a unique selling point. We're just a magazine show.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to find a niche, really, if that's what you're aiming for. I think you guys have the Ucast because it is different to what everyone else is doing. So, and that's really great. But it's that everyone does, well, so you do reviews of episodes, which is what we do, no doubt. You guys do. Yeah. So we're all pretty much doing the same thing as what James said. It's the interaction between the hosts, and that's what we've had good comments on as well. It's the banter between us.
Do you argue as much as we do?
Yes. Yeah, we always disagree.
Fighting's always good.
It is good. Yeah, it'll be a very boring world otherwise, wouldn't it?
Yeah, who wants to listen to everybody agree with each other? Anyway, point made. I think with our thing, we started out probably because we'd heard quite a few podcasts that were doing a really good job of dissing the programme, and the rest of the hosts were all quite, I don't know, quite woolly and fluffy people, and we really wanted to do something that was a bit hippie and full of love. So we initially started out doing it purely as we're going to only talk about the positives, we're going to focus on all of the good aspects of this show because we love it. And then over a course of time it transpired that two of the people who are appearing on the show actually would probably quite like to work for the BBC and write the show, and that's their aspiration. So they decided they would try and produce some creative material inspired by and based on the show, and then we took it from there. And then I was missing singing because I wasn't in a band at the time, so I thought I'd jump in with a few songs, and it went from there, and now it's pretty much that plus a little bit of talking. So that's really our niche, where we've come from, is just loving it and wanting to do it, like an extended CV, perhaps.
Getting the word out to fans. iTunes, website, but how important, like offline things like going to a convention and meeting fans, or what are the other ways that you have to employ just to get the word out about you?
Well, I've got to be quite honest that I've never actually been to a convention yet, so the convention coming up in March is actually the first one I've ever been to. So I'm actually really looking forward to it. But for advertising the show, as you say, you've got your website going, then you've got to advertise that as well. And also what you're doing on iTunes, you've got to advertise. So I used to sort of go to some like Doctor Who forums, and sort of one of the first places, that's how I got in, sort of found out about the podcast, was through a place like Digital Spy. I don't really want to advertise them because I had a bit of a falling out with them, but anyway. Yes, that's how I found out about all these guys, and that's how I started listening. So of course when it came to advertising our own one, I sort of started a thread on there. I was sort of threatened with action by the Digital Spy administrators. You cannot advertise, blah, blah, blah. You can't have links on here, so okay, I'll remove that. Try a more alternate route to advertise. Then I started getting stupid comments off of views, and I thought, well, I've done it for enough time. People know it's there now, and I'm not going to bother with this anymore. I don't need it. Really don't need it. And it was, some of the comments were personal attacks as well on the people I do it with, which I didn't take really kindly to. So no. Very nice, but yeah, it's difficult, as I say. You guys, you've been to the convention. You could probably answer this a whole lot better than I can.
It's slightly different. We've never tried to promote ourselves at a convention. What's really good about going to conventions is that you get a group of people who listen to you. So that when you suddenly have real life listeners, and they're not just pixels in statistic reports, it's actually quite scary. Because you think people, you've got to be careful what you say. It's not just you.
That's right. Yeah.
So I would say the marketing side of things, no, we haven't really focused on that from conventions, and we're in a bit of a unique position because the three of us, Trev, Tom, and I, we came over from the Whocast, which was one of the most successful, and still is one of the most successful Doctor Who podcasts out there. So we developed a following anyway. So we probably had a slightly different experience to a brand new startup show. We designed a graphic to say coming soon, the Doctor Who podcast, etc. Created a little bit of mystique about it, set up a few Twitter accounts, made certain that we tweeted the right people, and aside from that, then we don't really engage in huge amounts of marketing, frankly. It's not something that you need to do. What we found really helpful was when we found a fledgling podcast that we really, really liked, and I'm going to use the Whocast as an example, is that you get them on your show. Because when they overtake you in terms of quality and stature, and they turn around and say, oh, we got into this through the Doctor Who podcast, you see. So, be nice to people.
We did a bit of promotion involving vegetables.
Always good.
Yeah, it was good because 5 a day is always a nice idea. When we went to Gallifrey 1 last year. trip to, I think, to the States and to a convention, we decided we would take a big stack of CDs with us in our luggage, where we put together a few clips from the show and the album, and we covered it with potato prints of a logo that one of our listeners had drawn for us. And I think that made it stand out a little bit, because, I don't know, everybody likes potato prints, it reminds you of your childhood a bit, and so we just gave them out to people, and we also used our theme tune, which is a sort of an a cappella rendition of the theme, as a ringtone, so people could download the ringtone, and apparently it's caused a bit of consternation with some listeners, because it goes off, and when they're listening to the show, and they start thinking that their phone is ringing and looking out for their phone. But those sorts of, we've mainly done it by trying to give people bribes to make them listen, I think, is the main way of promoting ourselves. Yay!
I haven't been to a convention. Well, I went to a Doctor Who day at Longleat in, I think, 1996, but since then, to be honest, I'm still constantly surprised when anyone I don't know tells me they listen to the show, but I think the big thing that helped was getting on the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, because our downloads in Cream doubled and then tripled thanks to that. And I think just interacting with other shows, sending them feedback, and we've had, just led a couple of shout-outs, people saying they like us on different podcasts. That's definitely helped. But yeah, I mean, going on forums and stuff. Interesting what you said about attacks on people you do it with, because unfortunately Andy had quite a nasty attack on Gallifrey Base at one point.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which had Zervega attacking her because she was a girl. Unfortunately, it was a bit.
I thought we'd gone past that.
Yeah, you
years
kind
ago.
of hope, but it's a bit weird. But generally, people quite positive and they'll give it a listen.
Yeah.
I will just tell you one quick story about Radio Rassilon. They had a very unique way of promoting their show, and that was to attend Whovian 3 last year in Derby with their 5-year-old son. The CD, the question he asked Nicola Bryant was, "Would you like one of our CDs?" Nicola Bryant couldn't really say no. So I think, in all honesty, both Lisa and Harry deny setting it up. And they claimed that they were holding their heads in their hands when they were on their way home. But I think that's quite good. And I've got a 3-year-old little girl, so I'm thinking of ways to use and exploit her for the Doctor Who podcast promotion.
Yeah.
I have an 8-year-old nephew, but he might be a bit too old for that. That's quite,
you might be on too.
He's younger for that. That's the key factor.
The audience for podcasts, are you finding it mainly long-term fans, or are there's quite a lot of new fans now, post 2005 fans? Is it like a good mixture, or is it? Because obviously when you're reviewing maybe classics episodes, maybe a lot of not new fans are necessarily watching those, or they're not necessarily don't feel necessarily connected to the history of Doctor Who.
Well, I sort of kind of hope that if they haven't discovered the classic series, I mean, hopefully they're getting something out of our podcast that sort of might open their eyes to all the the history that's sort of that's there for Doctor Who. There's so much to watch, read, listen to. It's fantastic. So I hope we do open their eyes to it. So, but I'm obviously. It's since it came back in 2005, that's when it's just exploded. Fandom's always been there for Doctor Who, but it's always been, to my mind anyway, no one's ever sort of worn their heart on their sleeve when it comes to Doctor Who. You're a nerd, you're a geek, you like Doctor Who, that's for kids. No, it's not. It's not. Sorry, that's utter rot. Sorry, it's rot. So I just hope from my point of view, I just hope we do open their eyes to it. Really, there's so much to see.
Actually, I was thinking about that whilst I was in the bath the other day. I was thinking how now Doctor Who is basically mainstream. So there is absolutely no shame in saying you're a fan, and particularly in the UK, and increasingly so in America and Australia and around the world. And I know that quite a few of our fans are sort of steadfast, dyed-in-the-wool Whovians, particularly the ones who are involved in things like crafting. They love it so much they've decided to make bits of their house and their clothes and their furniture all resemble the programme, and I think that does take a level of dedication. But at the same time, we're getting a whole load of sort of tween-age, fairly young, I think our youngest listener is either 6 or 8, I can't remember, who obviously can't have been fans of the show back in the day because they weren't even zygotes. So, but yeah, I think it does. It is beginning to appeal to a younger audience more and more, and perhaps that is also down to the sort of the pace of the storytelling and the new format and the fact that the actors are a lot sexier, maybe, than the original series.
You don't have a thing for John Pertwee.
I was about to say John Pertwee. Yeah, come on. That was a dandy. Come on.
He looks like a man cloned with a sheep. Sorry.
Sacrilege.
Just saying, a sheep and some sort of leatherette suitcase.
You've thought about this, haven't you?
You haven't, yeah.
Peter Davison was quite a young action man of a doctor.
Really?
He was in the day.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
running.
Okay. So I think he was 29, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Matt Smith is the only
When he
person who was
started.
younger than him.
Yeah, he was only a couple of years
Yeah.
older than
Okay.
Matt Smith was.
Peter
Yes.
Davison, I will concede, but he was wearing a suit that made him look like an ice cream. So
Do you have celery in your ice cream?
quite frequently.
Yeah, but for me, it's always
frequently.
going to be the companions.
Well, you know, I think previously they were just window dressing. You know,
Mm.
let's put a bit of a skirt on the front of the program, and then that will make women feel like they're included. But
I think that's a point of view which I would argue with. I would have to
Yes,
say
yes.
because I think that possibly is the case. But Companion's Row, I think, was it had many different objectives, and certainly everyone resorts to things like, oh, Leela, she was big for the dads, etc. But there's an awful lot more, I think, to old style or old series Companion, and I think it's for podcasts, certainly like the DWP anyway, to actually draw those things out and explain them to listeners who may not even have been alive when those things went out. And I know certainly Tom is extremely conscious of explaining context when we start talking about the production values of Enemy of the World and you know which people are involved on it. Then we do explain who he is or who we're talking about or why we're talking about it. Not to leave at a point, but just in case people do think I've no idea what's going on, we'll move on. Having said that, it is quite an effort for us because all four of us are very, very big classic Who fans. That's the reason why we love the show. And as far as I was concerned, when the news that an episode of Galaxy 4 and the Underwater Menace are broken, within days of there being a teaser trailer released for last year's Christmas special, I wasn't interested in the Christmas special trailer at all. I only wanted to know about the fines. And you know, so it's hard for us sometimes to try and get a good blend. But it's a good point you raised. I mean, it's something that we really do need to be very conscious of with our audience. We don't want to alienate any segment of the Doctor Who audience or fan base.
Well, it's certainly something that Sean and I have discussed at length.
Yeah, he had a big go at me recently for throwing out names like Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes non-stop throughout.
Well, without
discussions.
any context, you know.
Plenty of context.
Well, context for those who understand who the names are, but not context for those who've never heard those names before.
There is a balance to be struck between being too patronising to those people who do know precisely what you're talking about and those people who you'd actually like to come back and watch another episode.
Yeah.
So, and it's a hard line to tread sometimes.
I think you can balance it out by having different types of people on the show. For example, I'm able to say such total and utter garbage because I'm coming from a position of total ignorance with regard to the classic series, which I can't watch without falling asleep.
You knew Peter Davison was 29 when he was cast. I'm not completely ignorant. I think you protest too much there.
Yeah, but that's mainly from Legally Blonde. Anyway, the point being that because we've got 2 or 3 guys on the programme who are genuine, absolutely were there since the cassette days, they can generally be relied on to correct me when I sort of talk about how Leela was an air hostess and that sort of thing, and how Tegan wore a fur bikini, you know, that stuff.
What an image.
Yeah. I'm really sorry.
You should be.
How easy has it been to get any guests for those who've actually had guests on the show from the Who universe? That is.
Well, we haven't gone down that road. No, we haven't gone down that road. No.
We've been very fortunate, had very little trouble. There's ways of describing the chase, I think, for certain individuals, and I think the longest it's taken me is about 13 months to get who I wanted on the show.
Who was that?
That was Clayton Hickman, strangely. I know it probably took you 20 seconds. Just like who cast the phone up and just say, "Oh, will you come on our show?" Unfortunately, neither Tom, Trevor, or I have that kind of allure.
Yeah.
And
we do have a secret weapon.
yes. Okay. But I think the more you have guests and stars from the Who universe on the show, then the easier it is. And I think certainly, I mean, Bernard Cribbins was another 6-month chase for us. And I never really thought that was going to happen. But when it did, it was just a case of dancing around the house for about 20 minutes, not being able to believe it. But that in itself opened so many more doors, and particularly when you've got a large number of downloads to tell people about, and you can use previous interviews as examples to show your style and what you can offer them.
Go on, so who's your best one?
My best interview?
Yeah.
We've got about 3 interviews that haven't actually gone online yet. I've got one with Rob Shearman that's going to go out in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm particularly proud of. That was extremely good. I had a recent interview with Louise Jameson, and again, she kind of terrified me in a way, I have to say, because she was very, very chatty when we were doing the preamble. You know, I'm James, I do a podcast, etc. The minute we were recording, she fixed me with that actor's stare, and no word. It was like that. It was impossible to get what I needed out. It was quite a lot of skillful editing going on there. But I would say certainly Bernard Cribbins and Louise Jameson have been good. Tom's interviewed Sylvester McCoy. A doctor has managed to elude me, and I know that's one of his highlights, along with Patterson Joseph. So yeah, lots of nice interviews.
I think we've only really had one celebrity guest, or one person who's been really, really involved with the programme, and that was Clayton Hickman. And I think, although I could be wrong, that he asked if he could come on.
So he'd probably been listening to you.
Yeah, so he independently contacted us to appear, which was really, really nice of him, because we were still relatively quite new, and it really helped us to get noticed. And it also meant that I could ask him all sorts of embarrassing questions about which aliens he found sexiest. And after that, we haven't had any other interest. No, we're hoping to do an interview with Gareth Roberts shortly. I think maybe something that might have persuaded him was we did do Clayton his own theme tune for him to use for his pleasure, to the tune of Shaft. So if anybody wants to appear on the show, you will get your own theme tune featuring your name in various different formats. So a big draw, clearly. So yeah, we are still looking for a few more people to come on. I think that if we ever did get one of the actors, that would be a great coup, but you can't necessarily rely on that happening. All very, very busy. And in a way, it's nicer to get the writers, because they're the people who are the real geniuses behind it, mostly. And they're certainly the people who most of us on our podcast aspire to be like. So,
how do you think social networking like Twitter has changed fandom?
Yeah, I think it's brought out the more eccentric elements of the fan base that we've always known is there, but it's just given them a loud voice. And I think there's some wonderful things about Twitter, social networking in general, but I also think it gives a very loud voice to the vocal minority, and that applies to Doctor Who fandom just as much. And I think generally it's a force for good. It's great that there are so many stars and writers associated with the show on Twitter, and you can access, you have access to them like you never before. But on the whole, I personally, I'm very, very hesitant about using things like Facebook. I still won't go on it, and I'm only really into Twitter. But yeah, I think it can be a force for good, and it is generally.
just the other day, he threw a clog into a combine harvester. I've only just started tweeting. I think I've done about 60 tweets, which is, seriously big for me. That's in 2.5 years. But I quite like it. I like the fact that you get people who are involved with the show commenting on your output a lot more, which is really flattering to think that somebody takes the time to listen and comment on it. And I think in a sense, it's helping to undermine the cult of celebrity in a little bit. Because if you can see somebody's real-time reactions to criticism or to praise, or their reactions to news in general, it stops you thinking of them as some sort of elevated higher being, and starts you thinking about, well, actually, does their opinion have merit, and how can I engage with them constructively on these different issues? And I think that's a good thing, really, for the most part. But yeah, okay, there are threats involved with being that much public, and people having a really, really easy way to express criticism that perhaps they haven't thought through or really digested yet. And yeah, that can lead to opinions coming out that are just a bit too extreme, or maybe could influence the show in one way or another, where it's actually not the majority of people aren't really thinking along those lines.
Well, you should have a YouTube channel, and the comments you get on that.
I would never do. Actually, Chris put our wedding vows up on YouTube, and he forgot to switch off the comments or the likes and the dislikes bar. Luckily, I noticed that he'd done it before anybody put anything up, but that would have been a bit heartbreaking.
And what about the pressure to tweet? Because obviously you are doing a show, and it's out there in the public. The pressure that you have put on yourself, that you have to, okay, I'm going to have to put out a tweet today. I haven't done one in a couple of hours, I'm going to have to do another one. Adam, do you feel that pressure?
Not particularly. I mean, I try and tweet vaguely regularly, particularly as we haven't been putting out episodes recently, just to show we're not dead. I mean, the weirdest experience I actually have had with Twitter was we did an episode of Whovian and I thought, oh, Chris Rake's bit meets on Twitter. I'll just tweet in the hope of a retweet. But he actually listened to the episode, and I got a running commentary from him about what he thought about what we said, including he was very upset that I accused him of technobabble. He said every single phrase was scientifically researched, and I didn't tweet back what I thought, which was yes, but no one understood them, so it's too technobabble.
That's what technobabble is.
Yeah, exactly. But he did explain to me what telebiogenesis was. So
what is it?
Oh, what is it?
it means creating life at a distance. There you go.
Okay.
I've learned something. But I mean, personally, I don't feel there's any pressure to tweet, but try to just to, like I say, show we're not dead.
I tried to tweet on the way here.
I tried to tweet. I tried, and it didn't work. But I'll do it later and pretend that it was before. I don't know if you can do that. But
Not really, no.
well.
Unless you can change back time.
I don't have that power yet.
No, you do that when you record.
Yes.
Several
Yeah.
times.
I'm still thinking of it with the edit button. So
There's no edit button on Twitter, I think.
No.
Once it's out there, you can either just delete it or...
Yeah, that's it. It's all or nothing, really, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I do try and tweet regularly, but I think it's just the same old rubbish that everyone else puts. You just, I'm going to the shops now, and in between all the stuff about what I'm doing on the podcast, or when he brings out to Doctor Who or something. But I think my proudest achievement so far on Twitter is Colin Baker retweeted one of my tweets, which was about Andrew Neil's hair.
Oh wow.
So that's my proudest moment.
But this is the kind of thing that I really hate about Twitter. It's developed a whole new level of hierarchy. I mean, you've got people beating, please RT us, please retweet us, and so on. And people feel pleased when somebody else has retweeted. I mean, I don't. The answer to your question, I don't feel pressurised to tweet. Is generally just a stream of consciousness. I mean, the main influence or the limiting effect on my tweeting is the wife, because it's not because I'm tweeting, it's because I'm surgically attached to my BlackBerry. And I'm certain Twitter is going to be cited in a number of divorce proceedings at some point. Not my own, because I do manage to keep it under control, he says.
my tweet I'm proudest of is I heard Michael Gove misusing some grammar. He was grammatically inaccurate on the Today programme. He said, "What parents want to know the most is what books is our children reading?" And I I very quickly tweeted it and
Well,
was like, oh, look at that, education minister. And that was probably my proudest tweet, but it's really not something that I think a lot of people will have read or even thought, oh.
What did he say back?
He didn't. He didn't. Probably because I didn't stick a little at thingy on it because I didn't know how to use it very well. But I did
You
use some
shouted
Latin
into the
in it,
void.
so there we go. That is seriously elitist and a bit.
Has the DWPA ever, to your knowledge, ever tried to sort of rank to see what the most popular podcasts are? Is there like a ranking of the week of who's got the most downloads? Or
No, it doesn't, and it's not something that would capture that information either. And statistics is a really interesting subject because obviously the first thing podcasters want to ask each other when they meet, how many downloads do you get? but the way we capture the information is vastly different from each other. Certainly when I was on a podcast prior to the one I'm on now, I was labouring under the belief we had tens of thousands, and then I looked into how that information was being collated, and it was wrong. It was completely wrong. So how do you measure yourselves against other people? Number of downloads within 1 week? Do you all use Google Analytics? Do you all use another piece of software that, as we do, which has been actually written for us, that only measures full downloads, etc.? But no, there isn't a league table aside from that which is in iTunes. But no, nobody really knows, in all honesty, how we fare against our competitors.
Does anyone really care about how many
Yes.
downloads? You do care?
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly happy to go on say this, because I know other people have just said, nope. Staggering Stories, for instance, another podcast, give them a good plug because they're an extremely entertaining comedy Doctor Who podcast, all sci-fi. They couldn't care less. The important thing for them is to get round somebody's front room on a Monday night and talk as you would down a pub, record it, put it out there.
Yeah.
But certainly for me it is important. I wouldn't want to spend the amount of time that I do, and I do enjoy it, but I wouldn't want to do it if I had 3 listeners, you know.
Yeah.
and for the episodes which do dip below the others, are you then analysing what's the common theme between those and what you may have done?
It's Peter Davison for us. Every time we cover Peter Davison episode, it's like our lowest download is Mordrin Undead, which just can't get above 170. But everything else getting above 200, but that just won't move. So Peter Davison, I worked out for us is the low. I don't know why, but
I think it's so hard to analyse why one episode is better than the other. I mean, a lot of it is to do with things totally outside of the podcast, the time of year, you know, whether or not people are actually finding you because there's a really successful plug you've had. You know.
Once the program's on, that
That-
makes
Yeah,
Is there a
does help,
boost
yeah.
when the program's on?
there's a huge
Yeah,
boost
it
when the
does.
program's on. Our highest downloaded episode, I don't know how many people downloaded. I think it's 11,000.
Wow.
Anyway, but that happened solely because we covered a song by the Axis of Awesome called the 4-Chord Song, which had been this massive hit on YouTube, where they hypothesised that you could cover any number of pop songs which had the same 4-chord progression. So we decided that we would redo the whole of a particular season using this 4-chord song. And then it turned out that the lead singer of the show was actually a massive, massive fan of Doctor Who, and in fact had a TARDIS tattooed on his lower leg. So he retweeted it, and all of the fans of the band then went and downloaded it and listened to it, which just means that there was this big spike. But of course, because we're putting quite a lot of original creative content into our podcasts, we are interested to see how well we're doing. Are we still being funny? Are we still being entertaining? And if we've had a week where perhaps we've gone a bit more cerebral or a bit less jocular, then that will make an impact, and we want to know why, so we can tailor it to our listeners.
Well, actually, I mean, for us, because we're on YouTube
We have
obviously,
no idea.
we have no idea during the actual live broadcast because YouTube won't capture who's watching you
And
live.
also we used to be on Ustream as well, and that doesn't tell
And
you.
Ustream statistics are all up and very odd. But obviously, we have the views after it's been live, and and then it starts counting from after. So once the show is then posted as a recording, then it starts counting from one upwards. And so there's always the number which is available for everyone to see. But then also YouTube also gives you the peaks during the program and the ups and downs, which is always.
I've never had really chat with you, but in terms of the ones we've got online, have we had any peaks for any like when we've had guests on the show or?
Actually, it was quite interesting because when we had Simon Fisher-Becker, that wasn't one of the most popular shows, and the most popular one we did was the very first one with our tribute to Elizabeth Sladen.
I'd have thought Andrew Cartmel would have been.
Andrew Cartmel wasn't that popular either.
Really?
But Daniel Hall was.
Yeah.
The episode we had with Daniel Hall.
That simply apparently we got a lot of hits simply because he turned around and he said the greatest show in the galaxy will be released in Dolby Stereo.
5.1.
Or 5.1, which they hadn't released that information anywhere else. So because we had that information on there, we had a lot of hits.
Somewhat concerning when that's the one thing that he highlights about the story, isn't it?
No, he promised us we would get an exclusive.
It's interesting what you say about Andrew Cartmel as well, because he was one of our most downloaded interviews that we had.
Well, what we did was we got him on and the writer of Delta the Bannerman, because there was no making of on the DVD for that, so we kind of had them on the show for an hour to discuss the making of Delta and the Bannerman, because we felt we were like creating the DVD extra that didn't exist, and that's why I thought that would have been the most. Because that was, I think, the most informative one we did.
It was fantastic because they were there for a whole hour live, and we were just chatting with both of them. And Andrew Cartmel was always very interesting to listen to. But it was surprising that it didn't translate, and then maybe it's because those watching on YouTube are not necessarily classic fans; they're just relatively new Doctor Who fans, and that's the way that they've come to get into Who fandom, is just watching videos on YouTube, and we're an extension of that.
I think it's interesting as well. I mean, because it's a different kind of format. So, and people have said the future of podcasting is to go broadcast yourself on YouTube and so on. I mean, I'm not entirely certain I completely agree with that. I do think you're appealing to a different kind of audience. I mean, the audio medium is extremely powerful. I mean, certainly in terms of the commute. I know it's becoming more and more commonplace for people to watch things on the way to work now, but it's still definitely in its infancy.
There's not something you can do if you're driving in.
Well,
cycling.
No, I agree. And I think that the podcast panel in Gallifrey recently, they were talking about this kind of thing, and it was a shame that they didn't mention Talking Who, certainly as a video kind of podcast. But of course, there is one other dedicated Doctor Who video podcast, but it's just that one. Every 10 minutes or so. 10 minutes every few months. But that shows, I think, the amount of work and the amount of quality that you can produce if you're prepared to put that amount of time and effort in. Podcasting, as you mentioned right at the top of the show, is actually quite straightforward. If you're not prepared to, or you don't want to invest hundreds and hundreds of pounds, you can do it with the stuff you've got on your computer for free. You can't really do that with YouTube or video podcasting.
Actually surprised. I mean, that camera over there is £99. It records in high definition.
You need to know how to put it on YouTube. I haven't figured out anything like that.
Your Windows Media that comes with your regular Windows computer now has some kind of editing software, so you can do basic editing.
We've released a couple of videos, and we've had a few fan videos made for us, which has been really nice. So we do have a little bit of YouTube content, and also where people have recorded the Bootcast live, because we did a live show. And so clips of that have gone online. So that does help you have a little bit of a look at what the crossover potential for your audience is. But I still think that definitely the audio way is the best for us.
It's certainly interesting if you've joined up with a lot of Doctor Who fan groups on Facebook, and you actually see what people are posting and what it is they're sharing amongst themselves. actually they're just sharing photographs and writing funny slogans across photographs and things, and that's really, or someone's edited a video of David Tennant into like a 2-minute I'm in love with him sort of video.
Yeah.
And that's primarily, I think, what people are, the majority of fans seem to be really sharing with each other. And
If you can
maybe
find a
more
way of-
cerebral videos such as ours
Yeah.
isn't always necessarily going to be on that, because you have to sit down, you have to watch it for an hour.
You need
I
more
think
cat
it's-
stress.
Yeah, yes. You need cat videos, and then you need some pictures, some slow changing resolution pictures of David Tennant with maybe some Maroon 5 in the background. Whoosh!
I mean, it is a challenge, I think, to
Yeah.
come up with something new and fresh all the time. I mean, if you look at the wonderful innovation To Entertain come up with a couple of years ago, of actually putting in-vision commentaries,
Yeah.
which has got to be the most pointless extra ever. I
Yeah.
mean, you just watch someone in a studio talking. But there's got to be some way of making it fresh, making it interesting, and or else obviously you're not taking advantage of the entire possibilities of the medium you're choosing to use.
There is one in-vision commentary which is actually better than the thing itself. It's not related to Doctor Who at all. It's R. Kelly's Trapped in the Closet. There's a film of him doing a commentary on it, but nobody has told him where the cameras are. So he keeps talking over here and then just laughing randomly at himself every night. He never actually says all that much, and then occasionally he'll be like, "This line is so good," and then he'll look elsewhere. And it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But
Who's R. Kelly?
R. Kelly. He believes he can fly.
That's Orville.
Sorry.
There are many similarities.
No.
Yeah.
What are your personal ambitions going forward as far as making the podcast or going beyond the podcast?
As we're sort of pretty new kids on the block when it comes to the podcast, we haven't sort of really thought that far ahead. I think really would be nice to interview someone connected to Who one day. But as I say, the only time I've interviewed anyone's when I've interviewed someone for a job, which is a completely different scenario. So I can't walk up to Matt Smith, so what are your strengths and weaknesses? Can I? I'll interview Guff, but that's what I think I'd like to do eventually. I don't know about the other two. Paul's one of my co-hosts. He's always a bit more reserved when it comes to that kind of thing. He's always careful what you say because he's connected to. He works for a firm of barristers, so he's very no. We shouldn't say this. We shouldn't say that. So So that's a fitness direction I'd like to go anyway.
We recently saw on the BBC website a job come up for assistant script editor for Doctor Who, and Andrew, who's our resident mime artist, sent it round the rest of us going, "Oh, we should all apply, maybe one of us will get into." But we didn't have the balls to do that. But we really should have, because I think, certainly for the two Chris's, Alpha and Sigma, that is definitely what they would really, really like to be doing.
When I was 14 and Peter Davison quit, I wrote to John Nathan Turner asking if I could audition. I still have the letter he sent me back.
What did he say?
He said that as I wasn't an equity member, he said he couldn't see me, but go to drama college, good luck, and hopefully we can work in the future.
Well, you did go to drama college,
Yeah.
but then he died.
He
so-
died, it's too late. So.
Of his eyes. And for me, I'm just happy to have an opportunity to keep singing, because I stopped doing it and I really missed it. And it's nice to think that this is a nice way of just making music. We're in the process of writing and setting up the recording of a 3-part website series called A Companion Piece, which is basically what happens to a companion once they land back without the
Dropped
doctor.
off, yeah.
Yeah, once they get dropped off. It's probably going to be sort of in the style of Dr. Horrible. I don't know if any of you have seen
Yes.
that. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go for something along those lines, and we're getting a few actors on board and a few original songs written, and so we'll be working on that over the course of the next year. So it'll probably be out sometime in 2012, 2013.
None of us, as far as I know, have got any ambitions At all, no. Certainly not to move into the industry, so to speak. I think I think we haven't got anything in common that way. But I think all I really want to do is just make certain that we improve, we continue to build our listener base. The more higher profile interviewee that I can get to meet and speak to, then personally that's great. But fundamentally this is a hobby. This is a hobby for all of us. We're not using it as a way to further our career in any way, shape or form. No real desire. It's just to have a lot of fun producing the best quality show that we can.
I'd really like to get back to a regular release schedule, actually. I felt particularly guilty hearing about how important being regular is. Like I said, I want definitely get back to a regular schedule, and at some point I think we'd like to recreate the Kalan Company opening credits on film. But apart from that, I think just keep doing it, really. Just we enjoy doing it. It's fun. I mean, that's why we do it ultimately, because I like telling people my opinions and making them listen to them. And
well, you make them do it.
Well, I tell friends to download it, so it's just keep doing it and have fun, and maybe go to a convention sometime soon. That's about it. It's not very ambitious, but just keep doing it, really.
Well, I'll help you out on the latter one.
Guys, do you want to just tell us how people can find your podcasts?
Okay, you can find us at www.whos-he.co.uk. You can also find us on iTunes, and you can follow us on Twitter at whos_he_podcast.
Well, if you search on Twitter for Ood, all four of us will come up, but you can find me at the Oodlaws. Alternatively, you can have a look on our website, which is www.theoodcast.com, or you can look on iTunes, or just Google the Oodcast, and you should see us there.
You can find us at the DoctorWhoPodcast.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at the DrWhoPodcast.
You can find us at www.nakedscarf.tumblr.com. We're on Twitter at NakedScarf, and we're on iTunes.
Great. Well, guys and lady, thank you very, very much. It's been a fantastic, over an hour, I think, of discussion on Doctor Who, and this is something that Sean and I have discovered. Every time we do a live Talking Who, we always overrun, because it's just somehow when you start talking Doctor Who, you just can't stop.
Yeah.
I think we proved it